good evening and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Gugulethu Cele. Well, July is National Savings Month in South Africa and mid-year and at the center of the winter season. Tonight we're going to take a look at how you can ensure that your funds don't freeze over at this time of the year. For more on the savings discussion, I'm now joined by Peter Dempsey. He's the Deputy CEO of ASISA, also known as the Association for Savings and Investment in South Africa. Peter, good to have you with us this evening. Maybe if you can paint a picture for us as to what the savings landscape in South Africa looks like at the moment.
The picture in South Africa as far as the savings landscape looks is not as encouraging as one would like it to be. So to give you an example, the national savings rate in South Africa is about 13.5%. So that includes savings by companies, individuals and governments. And individual savings rates are at 1.7%. So that means that of the household economic activity which is generated, only 1.7% of that is actually channeled into savings. And if you add on to that the fact that the level of indebtedness of the average South African is about 75% of their income, it's not a very positive picture at all.
Peter, it's clearly a very harsh reality to deal with, but organizations such as yourself, as well as the ones that you represent, are trying to cultivate a culture of saving in South Africa. Walk us through some of the initiatives that you drive in order to educate many consumers as to how to have more rands, hopefully, in the back pocket.
Gugu, this is the challenge, and both at the level of the members of ASISA as well as ASISA itself, there are a number of different initiatives. So member companies that belong to us run a variety of different programs, typically educational consumer type programs, which they'll run either through schools, through community organizations, in employer workplaces, as well as educational articles and communications which they send out. And they have their advisor communities who are very active in local communities, and that is where a lot of the consumer education initiative is delivered. ASISA also runs consumer education programs ourselves, and these range from consumer and media type interventions, but also we have an ASISA Foundation, which is aimed specifically at consumer education, and we do a lot of different initiatives. The key one is which we work with the trade union movements, and we use industrial theatre as a methodology to get citizens to understand the role that savings play and how you can start up with a savings program for yourself.
I'm happy that you touched on the various LSM groups there, because I take it, depending on which kind of audience you're speaking to, the level of financial literacy as well as understanding of technical jargon probably varies according to the particular LSM group that you're addressing here.
Absolutely right. And the problem is that the very people who need the most opportunity to discover what financial planning, what saving, what these things actually entail are the ones who are the least able to access this through electronic mediums. And a lot of initiatives are aimed at using electronic mediums for people to inform themselves. So it is important to structure this differently. So if you look, as an example, often it is said that low-income earners don't save, and there's truth in that. The fact is that there are over 800,000 stokvels, burial societies and community saving schemes. And these 800,000 schemes have something of the order of 8 million citizens of South Africa who belong to these schemes. And they have saved, the research varies, but they've saved somewhere between 40 and 45 billion rand into these schemes. So it is important that at grassroots level, the message is one that is understood. And the medium of transmission of the message is also one that works for the person that you're targeting.
The balance between informal savings methods that you've alluded to, like stokvels, as well as more advanced and developed products, how do we bridge that divide? Because it almost seems as though the best solution would be to see a South African environment where all consumers across the board have a viable savings in which they can monitor the progress.
That's exactly right. And the difficulty with the informal saving schemes is that they're not many of them are not really proper saving schemes. So perhaps I can illustrate by an example. If you're saving, and I use that word just to describe it, if you're saving, for example, a holiday, or if you're saving to pay school fees, or you're saving to pay for school uniforms, that's not really true saving. That's more a case of building up the required amount of money to meet the particular need that you've got. So it's really, it's just funding your expenditure in a different way. Saving is foregoing the expenditure in totality. It is about deferring spending for other things, and the other things are to provide for the time that you don't earn an income, to provide for the times that you have a shock, for example, an illness or disease that requires medical costs and medical care. So one needs to be careful about distinguishing the two. So in the informal sector, there are certainly lots of those institutions that do offer longer term savings, but many of them unfortunately are schemes where the members actually take their benefit out once a year. So that's where the formal savings system is an important one. That is aimed at much longer term savings. It's aimed at foregoing current expenditure, foregoing current, if you want, benefits or desires or needs, and putting that money aside for the things that you really can't plan for, such as retirement and illness, and perhaps disability aspects like that.
Now, there are certainly a variety of savings tools and investment tools available on the market, available to many consumers, but one that was recently introduced of late has to be the tax-free savings accounts by government. I want to get your thoughts on this, Peter. Is this a viable way for many consumers, especially those in the lower LSM groups and informal savings spheres, to make use of in order to expand on their savings, as you've alluded to?
Yes, this is a wonderful initiative. It's one that government introduced this year. It is a fantastic initiative, and effectively what it says is that private sector companies actually provide these schemes, and they need to meet certain requirements. And amongst these requirements are things like the cost structures and the fact that the money is accessible to the saver. And individuals can save up to 30,000 Rand a year into the scheme, and the full growth on that investment is then totally tax-free. So it's a wonderful plan. It is certainly one which we would like to see the citizens of the country using as far as possible. So it's a great initiative. It is important to note that it is not a product which provides against things like death or aspects like that. Those are more your insurance products. But from a savings point of view, it's a great product. There are others as well. The banks offer, the insurance companies do, the unit trust companies do. It's important to note that for people that don't actually pay tax, some of the benefit of the tax-free savings scheme don't really accrue to them because they don't pay tax anyway. So for people in that category, the horizon that they can choose from is wider than just the specific tax-free savings accounts. All of their investments would in fact be tax-free.
Peter, well, what we're trying to do is obviously get South African consumers active and involved when it comes to savings. From ASISA's perspective, are there practical words of advice that you can offer many of our viewers tonight about bolstering those financial savings, especially given the fact that it's mid-year?
I think the simplest place to start, and also the most difficult place to start, is with a budget. And very, very few people can tell you exactly how much they spend in a particular month and on what they spend it. So a good starting point is to have a really honest budget, writing down literally every day what you spend, which can include what you spend on transport, fast food, everything, top-ups for your mobile phone. So the first step is to get a complete picture of exactly what you spend your money on. You then need to match that to your income. And if all is going well, you're spending less than you're earning. If you're not, then you need to relook at what you're spending your money on, and you need to really endeavor to bring your expenditure in line with your income. Once you've got your budget under control, the next step is to set aside as an expense your savings. So much as you would view your expenditure on rental or transport or food, if you put savings as one of those must-do things, and you then set up a budget that says, I'm going to save and spend what's left, as opposed to spending and saving what's left, if anything, I would suggest that's a very good place to start.
Peter, you've certainly said quite a bit over the last 13 minutes, but maybe just to close off with, and in summation, you've offered valuable advice to several consumers about how to save their money. But what about people within families and educating their children as well about money?
You raise a very interesting point. That is probably one of the best legacies you can give your children, is to explain to them how budgeting works, explain to them why it's important to save, explain to them why it's important to be in a position to deal with unexpected events. And that's really what savings does for you. If you have a savings pool as a family, in your personal capacity as a family, then you're able to deal with the shocks that life will bring. If you don't have that, then you are forced to look perhaps to the state, or perhaps to family, or worst of all is look to money lenders to fund the shocks that life can and most likely will bring you. So that's a wonderful legacy for children, to understand the importance of being able to deal with the shocks that life brings you.
Peter, thank you so much for your time this evening. Such a pleasure speaking to you about the savings environment and savings culture in South Africa. Well, that's it for Personal Finance this evening. A big thank you once more to Peter Dempsey, the Deputy CEO of ASISA. Remember that we want to hear from you, so send us any of your comments, tweets or suggestions to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410 or to myself @Gugulethu on Twitter. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.